Someone else's head on your body. Journalism's headlining problem needs a takedown. I'm Subbu Vincent, Director of Journalism and Media Ethics at the Macular Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University. Let's take a look at just culture today. We can do face swapping. I can take my head and put it on your body, and your head and put it on someone else's body. And this is part of how we live our lives in digital culture in terms of tools. The younger generation tends to use these tools a lot more. It's built into apps. And we'd also say this is part of fun and satire. We use it to poke fun at each other. It's also part of digital culture. Now, in that context, let's take a look, let's shift basis and go into the truth realm. In the truth realm, these questions are different. If I put your head on my body and say that you did this or I did this, it starts becoming questions of authenticity, becomes a question of accuracy. There's also the question of integrity of the media. All of those questions come into the picture. That kind of thing happens all the time in journalism just for stories. Let's take a look at what President Trump said in July 2020. I'm going to read the quote for you. More white people are killed by police than black people. Now, the president's claim had a number of problems, as people have said. It's misleading on basic proportionality. It also legitimizes, it also goes to false equivalence because the power relationship between white cops killing black people is different from white cops killing white people. It also doesn't even respect the black experience and therefore diminishes their lived experience. Now, how did the news media actually report this? You'll see by and large the bodies of the stories actually carried what was true and contested the proportionality of the claim and said what was really going on. Um, you'll find different types of statistics that were actually put out on the stories that were quite informative. Now, this seems fair. It seems true. It seems that the stories actually were ethically done, all of that. So why am I complaining? Let's really look at the headlines of the stories and not the bodies of the stories. You take a look at this. I took a lot of screenshots. More white people than black people killed by police. This repeated the Trump's claim. Let's look at this one. Trump makes controversial comments about police violence. Here, the actual headline shifted frame into what was really going on as opposed to repeating the actual president's claim. But mostly out of about 40 plus headlines I saw, 35 or 36 were repeating the president's claim directly. They did not bother to interpret it or look at the frame that it really was in and change it. A few of them actually tried to shift. For example, the Guardian's one here says Trump twists stats on police brutality. That's a good start, and so forth. Now, what did the headlines really do? First of all, they didn't ask the question, should that kind of claim even run in a headline? And then there's also all of the things they did. They used a misleading frame to lead the story itself. They legitimized the false equivalence that the claim maker was introducing. And then they added insult to injury to the Black American experience. So this is what I call journalism's untrue head on a true body. And this is not unique to just repeating the claims of one political leader. This happens all the time between where the headline goes and where the story actually is. So I took a bunch of tweets at this, and then a whole bunch of people looked at the screenshots, and there was a lot of activity on that post that day. And people said this is a damning review. There were others who said this is incredible. It's so important to get the headlines right. So many people don't even read the story. All of those things did happen. But in a sense, what if you look at what the moral value trade-offs in headlining are? What are the decisions being made? One is, while it's true that headlining is hard and it's nobody's claim that headline should be done 100% accurately on the whole, on everything in the story, so you give the story away, but the real moral value trade-offs are not being called out. One of them is the facts first versus minimizing amplification harm. That's never given enough importance. But if you go deeper, there is a lack of adequate prioritization of ethical values in decision making when they conflict with each other. So there's neutrality, balance, and objectivity that keeps coming up over and over again. And these values are being prioritized by a privileged reporting class implicitly over values such as dignity, justice, and anti-elitism. And especially when it comes to quoting people of power, these things happen more often. What must really change? If you really look at it, all right, these things are happening on headlines, but what must change? Headlines are not a separate product. Editor reporter agency conflict is driving it. So there's a problem there. So that must change. That must go away. Second, uh, headlines need to reflect and represent the truth of the whole body. So then if you trust your reporting, if your reporting is getting the picture anyway, that's what the headline needs to actually represent. Let us not decapitate stories of their legitimacy by using headlines just as go everywhere.